All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a true story that totally blurs the line between a terrifying ghost legend and, honestly, a truly groundbreaking criminal investigation. Just picture this, a snowy Boston night. The biting cold is basically forcing everyone indoors. The whole residential building is settling into that quiet, isolating grip of winter, right? But that fragile piece is about to be completely shattered. What starts as this localized panic is going to slowly unravel into an impossible mystery, ultimately uncovering a dark, violent secret that had been sitting quietly hidden for almost a decade.
Please help me, he's gonna kill me. I mean, wow. That's the exact phrase that'll make any 911 dispatcher's blood just run cold. But put yourself in their shoes for a second. You aren't just getting one call. The switchboard is literally lighting up. Multiple panicked residents, completely separated from each other on this freezing December night, are all dialing in to report the exact same desperate plea from a woman trapped inside apartment 14B. The raw terror in these callers' voices was absolutely real, plunging local law enforcement into a massive, high-stakes crisis. So, Section 1. The Screams in 14B, a December night in Boston.
Okay, so at exactly 11:26 p.m., that first wave of 911 calls floods in. Adrenaline takes over, and the police response is incredibly swift. Just 4 minutes later, at 11:30 p.m., Boston police arrive on the scene. Believing they're walking right into a life-or-death situation, they physically breach the heavy door to apartment 14B with their weapons drawn. They are fully expecting the worst, but instead, they find absolutely nothing. They step into this completely vacant, eerily quiet, dust-free apartment. No furniture, no personal belongings at all. And get this, according to the building's official records, that exact unit had been sitting completely empty for 6 whole months.
Moving on to Section 2, the empty room. Zero physical evidence. So, when lead detective Rachel Morgan gets there, she initially thinks, this has to be some highly coordinated prank. But acting on pure procedural instinct, she brings in the forensic teams to sweep the space from top to bottom. I'm talking dusting the sills, swabbing the floors, checking the locks, the whole shebang. And nothing. Literally no fingerprints anywhere. Zero trace of DNA, no signs of forced entry. Yet when Morgan does her due diligence and interviews every single witness separately, away from the influence of their neighbors, which is absolutely crucial, the impossibility of the situation just deepens. Every single one of them describes hearing the exact same, identical plea for help. Dozens of people swore a woman was being attacked behind that door, but the science definitively said absolutely no one had been inside. Now, in a lot of jurisdictions, a case like this hits a dead end right then and there. And it almost did. Well, until 3 nights later, when those piercing screams happened all over again. This time, security cameras in the building actually captured residents physically fleeing into the hallways in pure terror. While the terrified public and local news stations were super quick to jump on this idea of a haunted apartment, Detective Morgan wasn't having any of it. She absolutely refused to be swept up in the hysteria. She anchored her entire approach in empirical evidence. You see, she didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in facts, logic, and physical proof. She wasn't about to let some urban legend dictate her police work. That brings us to Section 3, reopening the cold case. A new suspect emerges. So instead of hunting for ghosts, Morgan looked at the tapes. She methodically broke down the footage minute by minute. Step 1, she meticulously reviewed the security cameras showing the crowds running away from the screams. Step 2, this slow, kind of creeping realization took hold as she noticed a really distinct pattern. A maintenance worker named Thomas Reed was always loitering somewhere in the background during every single incident. He wasn't reacting, he was just watching. Step 3, she dug into his background. Reed was incredibly trusted. He had a perfectly clean 10-year employment history at the building. He was essentially part of the wallpaper, right? Totally invisible to the residents who trusted him completely. But Morgan spotted the anomaly, and she pulled the thread.
What the investigation uncovered next was an impossible-to-ignore connection that blew the whole mystery wide open. Just think about the present day for a second. We've got an unknown, screaming woman in apartment 14B, and Thomas Reed is mysteriously present in the footage during all this chaos. Now contrast that with the past. Years earlier, a young woman named Jessica Turner vanished without a trace, and her last known location, entering that exact same unit, apartment 14B. The single common denominator connecting these two crazy situations is that Thomas Reed was employed at that very building, with full access to the units right when Jessica disappeared. Needless to say, Detective Morgan immediately reopened Jessica's cold case. Which leads right into Section 4, the secret recording, a shocking discovery. With Thomas Reed officially locked in as a primary suspect, the police moved fast. They got a warrant to execute a tactical search of his maintenance workshop down in the building's basement. And what they uncovered there, man, it shifted the whole case from a mystery into a complete nightmare. They found a false wall. Hidden entirely out of sight, this architectural deception concealed a highly disturbing collection of personal items. It was literal physical proof that a predator had been operating right under everyone's noses for years, completely shielded by his mundane job title. Among the items hidden in the dark behind that wall was something truly irreplaceable: Jessica Turner's necklace. This was the exact piece of jewelry the young woman was wearing on the day she vanished, essentially preserved as a morbid trophy. Finding the victim's necklace definitively linked Reed to Jessica's long unsolved disappearance, and they arrested him immediately. But during intense questioning, he completely stonewalled the police, denied absolutely everything. This left detectives in a really agonizing spot. They had a killer in custody, sure, but they still had a glaring, present-day, impossible mystery to solve. I mean, where on earth were those echoing screams coming from if the apartment was completely empty? Well, the answer was actually waiting for them back inside that empty room. The screams those residents were hearing weren't paranormal, and they definitely weren't some mass hallucination. They were coming from a small, battery-operated wireless speaker. Reed had secretly hidden it deep inside the floorboards of the vacant apartment, completely tucked out of sight from any standard visual sweep. Turns out, Reed had engineered this horrifying, deeply cynical deception. He was playing an old audio recording through that hidden speaker every few weeks. But guys, here is the absolute most agonizing part of the entire investigation. The voice on that tape? It actually belonged to Jessica Turner. The recording was captured by Reed shortly before he murdered her years prior. Why would he do this? He literally weaponized the audio of Jessica's pre-murder cries to terrify the residents, intentionally keeping them far, far away from the vacant apartment where he had hidden even more evidence connected to his crimes. He basically assumed no one would ever thoroughly investigate a ghost story, using people's psychological fear of the paranormal as his ultimate shield against the law. Finally, let's look at Section 5, the silent witness, justice for Jessica. 10. That's the number of years this dark mystery haunted the city of Boston. And it's the number of years a family waited in total agony for answers about what happened to their daughter. But when he was finally confronted in the interrogation room with the overwhelming forensic evidence, the hidden necklace, the recovered speaker, the facade finally, thankfully, crumbled. Reed confessed to the murder. He admitted to hiding the brutal truth for a whole decade, finally closing this terrifying cold case and bringing a long overdue measure of justice to Jessica Turner. Months later, as the dust settled on the trial, Detective Morgan summed up the resolution perfectly. She said, "Everyone thought the voice was asking for help. In reality, it was helping us solve a murder." It's such a profound realization of poetic justice, isn't it? The killer's incredibly arrogant attempt to use his victim's voice as camouflage actually became the exact instrument of his own destruction. That voice, reaching out from the past, forever became known by the investigative team as the silent witness. As we wrap up this explainer, it really leaves us with a chilling thought to reflect on. What other cold cases are out there, just waiting for the right voice to speak up? It's a stark reminder that vital, hidden evidence might be echoing right around us, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone like Detective Morgan to pause, listen to the facts, and look past the rumors. Thank you so much for exploring this deeply compelling case with me today. Keep your minds open and hey, never stop questioning what you hear.